It only took me about $700 to travel across Vietnam, but after everything I went through, I don't know if I'd still do it again. So when I was traveling the world, I got this crazy idea from a Top Gear episode that I'd seen like many years ago. It was that one where they went on the Hai Van Pass through Vietnam, and I got inspired by it. That was what made me want to take this trip. So with almost no motorbiking experience, I've never been on two wheels outside of a bike, I thought, why not take this trip? Now, the funny thing is, growing up, I'd always heard that motorcycles would be the death of me. But motorcycles were on the same tier as like quicksand when I was growing up. They were both extremely dangerous. So with almost no experience on motorbiking, I'd only ridden one before when I was in Nicaragua, I decided it would be a great idea to purchase the cheapest motorbike I could in Vietnam and go all the way from the south to the north, an almost 4,000 kilometer trip. But before I get into the trip, let me take you back to where it kind of all began. I just kind of started traveling Southeast Asia, and whenever I go to a new country, I always do like a little bit of research just to kind of get a general idea of what I think would be fun to do there. And since I had already knew I would be doing this motorbike trip in Vietnam, I figured it'd be a good idea to do a little bit of research into where I should go and what places I should see. And so when I was researching the trip, I realized just how crazy this idea might be. All the information online was showing pictures of tourists injured and motorbikes crashed and bandaged up tourists that hadn't made it through. It seemed like quite a dangerous endeavor. And most of these pictures were just on the Ha Giang Loop, the end of my trip. Just a 1-week trip through the mountains up north that I had only planned to do at the end. But for my trip that I'd planned, I was doing a full 30 days. I was going all the way from the south through Phu Quoc up to the north to end in Hanoi and do the Ha Giang Loop. So after seeing all of this information about how dangerous it is, what could happen out there, the wild streets of Hanoi and Vietnam, I realized I might have bit off more than I could chew. But it didn't stop me from continuing on. I decided I was doing this trip, and so I had to do it. Once I commit to that idea, I'm doing it. So with this idea that I was going to do it, it was going to happen, I flew to Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City is kind of like the backpackers' hub, the real start of a lot of these trips. And from what I learned, it is the less common of the two though. Hanoi seems to be the place where all the motorbikers really start their trip. Now I didn't know that because of my limited research, so I ran into a few issues, especially when it came to purchasing the motorbike. But I'll talk about that later. So I had this beautiful idea of what I was going to do. It was going to be a 4,000 kilometer motorbike trip from the south of Vietnam, from Ho Chi Minh City, going all the way to Phu Quoc on the far west, all the way up north, through the Hai Van Pass, through Hoi An, all the way to Hanoi, and then ending with this beautiful trip, the Ha Giang Loop, spending a week up in the mountains up north. So that was my incredible idea. Now, there are many things that kind of went wrong along the way. When I look back, maybe I should have spent a little bit more time finding the right motorbike, or I should have spent a little bit more time planning the right routes. I probably should have spent a little bit more time interacting with weather apps, trying to figure out when it was going to rain and when it wasn't, because I really did it the rough way. Now, if you were in my situation, I don't know if that's what you would have done, but for me, I kind of wanted to make myself suffer in a weird way. But man, the whole experience was just so incredible. The landscape felt so raw. It felt so beautiful. There was just moments where you're riding through the countryside and you're going through villages, you're going through, just parts of Vietnam where no one else really stays. People don't stop and explore it. And then you're going through the famously beautiful parts, the Hai Van Pass, Ninh Binh, all these gorgeous places. As cheesy as it sounds, it really wasn't just about the landscapes for me that really made this journey, this trip so amazing. It was these deep interactions that I had with the people that were just so eye-opening for a different culture that I never thought, that I'd experience. People just so willing to be helpful. They just cared about my situation, whatever I had going on, to an extent and to an extreme that I just wasn't ready to accept it in some cases. It was overwhelming, and it was beautiful and hard and challenging, and I just didn't know what to do a lot of the time with all this generosity and this kindness that this country and the people that live there were expressing to me. It was in these moments that I really found like the heart and the soul of Vietnam. And I really felt what it was like to live there and be with the people. But as far as everything goes, it wasn't always smooth sailing. The amount of times that my motorbike broke down, I was ready to quit after the first week of riding. The amount of roads that just seemed unrideable, but you know, you just have to keep going. There's no turning back. There's nowhere to stop. You have to make it to your next point. There was a typhoon that came when I was stuck on a Phu Quoc Island. All the flights, all the ferries, everything was canceled. I couldn't leave. But yeah, I mean, with everything that went wrong on the bike, on the location, in the places, whatever it was just an experience that like really touched me that I didn't know it would. So I want to share this experience with you. I want to tell you in detail about everything that happened and everything that went down. And maybe you would like to do this trip sometime. I mean, maybe you'd spend a little bit more money than the $700 that I spent for the whole month, but this is my journey of how I managed to do it. So if you're curious, keep watching.